This is a log from Abzauris. We're going to just take a look at the general tune and make any general suggestions that I can come up with. I don't have a config dump from you, so I don't know what your current values are, but you have confirmed you're running Betaflight, one of the versions of Betaflight. So I know you've got the soft filters available to you, as opposed to the 1.9 clean flight, which you would not have the soft filters available to you. So the first thing I do, as always, when we've just got a general look at a tune, is check your gyro, zoom all the way out, and look at the thickness of the lines. These lines are acceptable. Your general amount of gyro filtering is adequate. I would guess. Well, I'm not going to guess. But yeah, this is a little bit on the noisier side than some of the stuff I've seen. Sorry about that. It's a little bit on the noisier side than some of the stuff I've seen, but well within, just fine range. Just fine to good. Again, just looking at the thickness of the lines here. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to look at your gyro PID roll and gyro PID pitch. And I don't actually really care so much about the gyro, and I'm going to zoom back into 100, and your D term. So I actually, the reason I asked you what firmware you were using on the forum is I looked at your posts, your log, and I kind of wondered if you were running 1.9. This doesn't look dissimilar to what I've seen in some cases when somebody is running CleanFlight 1.9 without D term filtering. The D term is super noisy here, just a bunch of ziggy-zaggy back and forth, right? So that's not good. That's creating micro oscillations in your motors. That is at the best, it's just wasting a little bit of power as heat. And in worst cases, in the worst case, it can actually like damage your motors. Oh, sorry, bumped that. In the worst case, it can damage your motors by overheating them, or your motors or your ESCs. That's probably not happening now, or you would probably have noticed by now. But since we looked at your gyro traces and your gyro traces look basically okay, it makes me think that your D-term cut hertz filter needs to have a lower cutoff frequency. So if you've got D-term cut of 25 now, take it down to 20 or 15. I don't know what your D-term cut is at, but if I had to guess, I would guess that it's a little bit high, 18, 20, maybe even higher than that. I'm not sure how it would have gotten that way because the default is to have it much lower. So maybe you were tweaking with it or something. I don't know. If you've got a D-term cut of 10 or 12, then I'm completely confused as to what I'm looking at. I have no idea. Because again, your gyros, if you had super noisy gyros, then you could have a low D-term cut hertz and still have a noisy D term. But since your gyros are not super noisy, which we confirmed, the fact that the D term is so noisy must mean that you don't have a lot of filtering on it. I hope. Maybe you'll tell me if I'm right or if I'm wrong. Way too much noise here on the D term, though. This is just no good. And if we look at your motors, we should be able to see that, yeah, look how sketchy your motor traces are. This is not good. This isn't good for your motors. And again, you're probably not burning them up, but they may be coming down warmer than they need to. And this is certainly not good for your flight performance. Look how jagged these lines are. They should not look like that. They should be relatively smooth, right? Um, this isn't good. And that's your D term. It's entirely your D term doing that. And if you want to feel the effect, you can just take your D gain to 0, at which point your D term will just be flat the whole time. Now, I'm not suggesting that the copter would fly very well that way. It might not. It probably would not fly the best that way, but it would smooth out the motors, right? So yeah, definitely lower your D-term cut hertz to a lower value. I'm guessing you've got it at a relatively high value, maybe 18 or 20 or even higher. Lower it to something like 15 maybe, or maybe a little lower. If you don't have it at a super high like 18, 20 or higher, then then this is pretty weird, and I'm not sure. I'd be curious what your gyro cut was. Maybe you have a really vibration-free copter, and your gyro cut is too high. Although the recommended setting for gyro cut is 188, so the worst you could do is make it 256, right? So that's not that different. I don't know. There is a pretty big difference in noise between gyro cut of 256 and gyro cut of 188. So maybe you're running gyro cut 256 and D-term cut 18, which is D-term cut of 18 is not an unreasonable number, but this is way more noise than I would expect to see at D-term cut of 18. So, but maybe you've got a high gyro cut as well, and that's sort of all adding up. So if you're not running gyro cut of 188, go ahead and run gyro cut of 188. If your D-term cut is higher than about 15, lower it to 15 or 12, and that'll help clean up that D-term. It's really impossible for me to judge whether your D gain is in the right realm because the D-term is just so noisy. But it looks like you may also just have excess D gain. If we look at the P term on roll, let's just look at roll for a minute. It looks like the D term is pretty consistently larger than the P term, but it's really hard to judge. You may have, I would say there's a fair chance your D gain is also too high. So I think maybe you need to just go back to fundamentals a little bit. Lower your D gain down to like 15, which will back the D term off a lot. And again, that's not going to be your final setting where the copter will fly the best, but it'll allow you to sort of remove this negative effect and sort of feel out more effectively where it needs to be. So I'm guessing that your D gain is too high and your D term cut hertz is also too high. Let's have a look just at the P term now and see if there's anything we can see here. In fact, let me do this. Let's add RC command subroll and roll P term, and we'll just look at them. I think we may not have a lot to see here because without looking at your video, it's impossible to tell for sure, but it doesn't look like there's a lot of like aggressive flying here. It looks like it's pretty mild flying, and so we don't see the P term doing a lot, but your throttle is pretty low. You've got a little, let's see, here's a throttle punch. Let's see, your throttle went up to maybe 1500. Not for very long. So there's not a lot of actual like flying going on here. So it's a little hard to judge whether I don't see any like super bad oscillations. That doesn't mean a lot because there's not a lot of like aggressive flying. It looks like relatively mild flying. So the fact that I don't see like terrible oscillations tells us, well, your P term, it's not ridiculously high. A little hard to judge though. But your P term may be about in the right realm or maybe a little low. No way to be sure without some like more aggressive flight, frankly. Yeah. And same thing with pitch. It's a little hard to judge what's going on. I don't see any like bad oscillations, but in the same token, it doesn't look like there's any really aggressive flying, so you're not really pushing it, so it's a little hard to judge. But yeah, the D term is what jumps out the most in this. Oh, so I hope that's helpful, and happy flying.